I am Evan from OneTrack, and I'm going to be playing moderator for today's session. I'm going to let most of the speaking be done by people a whole lot smarter than I am. But I think to start things off, I want to remind everyone there is a Q&A function here. I do encourage you to use it. I think most of you have either used telematics in the past or evaluating your options maybe for next year. So this is a great chance, I think, to ask questions directly to the folks over at Inland Star and Nick here at OneTrack to get different perspectives on different technologies out there to help you kind of evaluate your options. So before we dive into the kind of the fun topics today, I think we're going to do a round of introductions from everyone on the panel here. So I guess start things off. Nick, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your background?
Absolutely. Thank you, Evan. So my name is Nick Palczynski. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships here at OneTrack. I've been with the organization for almost 3 years to the date, as a matter of fact. I got my start in computer vision technology actually in agriculture, where we were using this technology to identify disease and pests and use it to count grain that had been left in the field. So very familiar with this technology. Frankly, I love what it's capable of, and most exciting, most important, actually, what brings us here today is what this technology can be used for in your warehouse to ensure that your people show up to work and go home to work in the same condition, right? Only a little bit happier because they're going home for the day. So excited to hear the questions that come up, and looking forward to sharing what we've done with Inland Star to date.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Daniel, how about you?
Daniel Alvarado, Director of Operations. I've been with Inland Star since 2016. Started with the company operating our facility in Los Angeles, and in 2020 got an opportunity to run our bigger facility here in Fresno.
Awesome. And Doug, how about you bat round off for us?
Yeah, no problem. So I'm Doug Draper with Inland Star. Not quite 3 years, Nick. I guess I'm shy of 2 years just about being here, but supply chain and logistics has been my career since I got out of college. A little bit of the small parcel industry. I moved into freight forwarding for probably 10 years, and then been in the warehousing aspect of our industry for just a little bit less than 13 years. So excited to be part of this group, and thank you for the invite.
Very cool. So Nick, before we get into all the questions and the open conversation here, how about you set the stage for us and share a little bit about, what telematics is, what OneTrack is, the difference between the two, and then I think we can dive into stories from Inland Star.
Absolutely, would love to. So as we've discussed, we're here to talk about the difference between AI and machine learning, specifically computer vision, and your traditional telemetry systems that are very common in the industry today. So when you think about forklift telemetry system, generally you think of shutdown capabilities, you think of setting that G-force threshold and hoping that I hope I have it dialed in just right so that I'm getting every impact that I need to get and not getting the crack in the ground, or that time that my my operator runs over that piece of broken pallet that remains on the warehouse floor, and then just hoping that you can understand what exactly took place based on the feedback from the operator, feedback from maybe any eyewitnesses account, and certainly many of our customers who had used traditional telemetry systems can relate that ever dreaded, we went and spent 4 hours combing through our security camera footage just to find out that this just was out of reach for us, just around the corner of that racking that now we can't see what exactly took place. So what are some of those challenges that our customers have seen with traditional telemetry systems? And that idea of having to set a specific threshold to trigger an event becomes incredibly difficult. Almost, we've heard it described as chasing your tail, because as soon as you make an adjustment, you just realize that, oh, we missed a particular type of event, or we're now seeing too many events, and the supervisors are beginning to tone it out to say, this isn't relevant, this isn't important to us. And the ever dreaded, oh, we've shut down that piece of equipment, now I have to take another person's time while this operator is shut down, and we're losing time very, very regularly to go unlock a piece of equipment, all for maybe what was a bad joint in the concrete, or that piece of pallet that remains on the floor that they ran over. So the challenge there is, how do you distinguish what is actual noise, that false event, to what is important and what should our team and our supervisors be focused on when they're coaching the operators. So what ultimately happens is you lose a significant amount of time during those shutdown events. But more importantly, your supervisors begin to tone out the information that's coming out of the system. And ultimately, what we've seen happen very commonly is that they go ahead and turn that G-force threshold way up so that they're not getting the notifications. And ultimately, you end up paying for a system that's not actually being utilized within the four walls of your facility today. So this is a perfect example of what you're seeing here, and we'll let this play through a couple times. But what you'll witness here is a customer that decided we're going to do a test between OneTrack and with our telemetry system. And what you saw here is that they ran over a piece of board or a crack in the ground, and it triggers their telemetry system here. When he turns into this area, the system shuts down after he acknowledges that this type of impact or threshold was achieved. And that operator is required to then go find a supervisor to unlock the piece of equipment. The duration of this actually lasts for about 45 minutes. We have it playing in time lapse so that you can see a little bit more of how long does this take, or what's going on. And as you can see here now, the supervisor's back to unload or unlock that piece of equipment and get them back performing their daily tasks. So ultimately, what that lack of visibility creates is cost and risk. And so unfortunately, this is a real event where one of our customers showed up and this is what they arrived to. And without OneTrack, this would have been the communication that their team would have engaged in. What happened? It happened between 2 and 4, but we have no idea when, who was involved. And now you can see that by bringing visibility to your operations, you can ultimately understand these things. So you can't solve problems that you can't see, and neither can your team. And that comes to safety, that comes to productivity, and that comes focused around quality, right? So being able to deliver that visibility where and when you need it ultimately helps our customers to make better, more accurate decisions. So we're doing this by providing that 24/7 monitoring, alerting your team in real time when something occurs, giving your team that ability to use the footage to continuously improve operations, right? Whether this be a time study that you can now conduct from the comfort of your office, or doing that formal event investigation to where now you can understand what was that leading indicator that led to maybe that safety event, and then wrapping it all together for our customers so that they can use the data that is being captured to make better decisions about ways to improve their operations. We're doing this by delivering these sensors to our customers in a very streamlined process. Installation is very straightforward. You have the view that you've seen in a couple of the examples here. We are not brand reliant, so we can be put on any piece of equipment, as you'll see here in the next slide. It comes equipped with cellular connection and Wi-Fi capabilities. So right out of the box, you're up and running because we recognize that it can be a little bit of a challenge for Wi-Fi, and many of our customers have challenges just keeping their RF units on the Wi-Fi, much less adding another device that would have to be reliant on it as well. And then all of the processing is done on board that little sensor, which is incredibly important because not only is the processing done, but we're also pushing updates on a very regular basis to our sensors so that your team always has the latest and greatest technology that OneTrack has to offer, and it's continuously improving on those key events that we're sharing with your team and that your team should be focused on. So when you think about these different types of pieces of equipment that you have in your facility, this was what it would look like on each of those. We are also doing stationary applications to help with the ability to understand load quality, and from our OneView ceiling mounted solutions, being able to understand how much dock space is available. So there's a variety of different applications that we can deploy for our customers to ensure we're very focused on what's important and delivering that key information to your team. So it's accountability on day one, right? So what we see is those alerts coming to you via email, giving your team the ability to act and capture everything digitally within the OneTrack dashboard so that when you need to go and review that data, you have the ability to analyze everything in one spot, giving a cohesive understanding to exactly what happened from the moment something occurs to the time where you're looking at your entire network to say, how can we be better and what decisions do we need to make to make those improvements.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick, for that. And we're gonna cool it on the slides now, so everyone don't worry. This won't be us just talking at you the whole time. This is meant to be a conversation. And the real reason we came here is because we've been working with Inland Star for a couple of years now, and in that time, they've used both traditional telemetry systems. They've used telemetry and OneTrack, and then now they've actually completely replaced their telematics with OneTrack and added in a bunch of other functionality around productivity and different things like that. But given that history, we thought it would be a really valuable story to hear and just conversation to have on what they have seen from the different technologies and how they're using each in their operations now and what they kind of view as the best way forward to have the safest, highest quality operations. So with that in mind, we have questions broken down into kind of 5 topic areas of how computer vision, AI, and telemetry stack up head to head. And I think first things first is accuracy, something that's on everyone's mind, right? You want to know that your team is getting the most accurate data possible. You want to know that your team is getting what they need to see to take real action. So with that in mind, Doug, Daniel, what was your experience like when it came to the accuracy of the telemetry system based on G-force? What was that signal to noise ratio like when you're using that technology?
Our experience with the telematics was overpromised and underdelivered, and it was a scenario for us where we were getting out of old equipment that didn't have those capabilities, and we thought that there would be an opportunity as we were procuring new equipment to capitalize on a feature that we thought would increase our efficiencies, mainly visibility and a focus on safety. But to piggyback off what Nick was saying, some of the scenarios we encountered on the onset were that it wasn't like right out of the box capable of doing what it was said to be done. There was a lot of programming and between the procuring of the equipment and getting the actual telematics set up. And there was about a half a year period between it being completely done. And even then, the features were impeding our ability to work efficiently. To Nick's earlier point, our biggest idle times were, equipment just shutting down because of, riding over a bump or riding over a broken pallet or something. Some of the things we encountered too were the pre-flight inspections on the telematics were set up to jumble the questions, and even when the operators were answering the questions in a manner that should allow them to proceed forward with operating the equipment, would error out and then lock the equipment and force us to turn it on, turn it back on, and rinse and repeat until we found some sort of success. The reporting, the reports we got really didn't enhance our visibility to take real-time action to act upon. To Nick's earlier point, we were chasing our tails in a lot of situations where we were alerted on an impact or so forth. So, our aim was to upgrade and get to something that would help enhance our capabilities. And shortly thereafter, this is 2021, by the time we're up and running, OneTrack comes in later that year and they provide us a demo. The demo alone blew us away because it over-delivered on what we were expecting to get from the telematics. And the key differentiator was the eye in the sky, the camera. Picture's worth 1,000 words. We did like the fact that it wasn't tied to locking out the equipment because we wanted the operators to be efficient. However, it did leverage not turning off the equipment, would sending an alert to us in real time of an event we may want to look at, and then make a decision in real time. So our experience so far with the OneTrack was it was a major upgrade and enhancement, and it delivered on what we were aiming to get out of the telematics and more.
Yeah, my comment on the speed there, Evan, would be it told you what happened, but you couldn't see it. So like what truly happened? Hey, there was an incident. Okay, cool. I understand that. And that's absolutely important for the safety of the operation. What happened? It's like a game of Clue, right? I think, Nick, you mentioned 4 hours. I mean, you just use that as an example, but okay, let's go investigate what happened right there. The investigation of it is a challenge in of itself. You got to do it in the moment. It takes time. Where are the resources to pull away? I mean, literally, it's like I said, a game of Clue or interviewing people about what transpired. Where Daniel said, "Eye in the sky." It's right there, and you can really figure out what's going on. And Daniel and I were joking before this. It's almost, if you've seen that Progressive commercial where they're talking and somebody drops the challenge flag, and then they come out and they show the video of really what happened. That's kind of a maybe a interesting analogy, but the speed to me is what happened so we can properly address it. That's really what shot through the roof as far as efficiency.
Daniel, when we first started working together, I remember having the discussion around the process of trying to tie that to get that telemetry system dialed in just right. Can you elaborate on your experience of how did that work for your team, trying to set the threshold? And if I remember correctly, we were always talking about, hey, we were always having to adjust that telemetry setting where we're trying to find the right thing, and ultimately what you ended up doing from that perspective.
We ended up just shutting it off from the telemetry system because we operate different pieces of equipment that may vibrate differently in different environments. And it was just very difficult to convey that to the customer support on the telematics side to calibrate it correctly. So it was just a uphill climb for us to even get to where we can get to some sort of happy medium. So it got to the point where that feature just needed to be turned off because it was impacting our ability to just be efficient.
Yeah. Nick, when you think about that signal to noise ratio, I think it's an important distinction to make because most telemetry systems rely on G-force, right? Just movement, velocity, whatever you want to call that. It's a little more scientific than I go. But OneTrack has on the other side, I think just in general, the technology of computer vision has a different way to look at these events. So can you talk a little bit more about maybe the differences between how a telemetry system picks up on an event versus how OneTrack is doing it and how that helps with that kind of signal to noise ratio?
Yeah, absolutely. And without making everybody leave the webinar here from boredom, I'll keep it pretty high level, because if you think about computer vision, from a total sort of overview of the technology, the reality of it is, if you can train the computer, if you can look at a picture and the difference between an egg and a ping pong ball, you can ultimately train a computer to recognize those differences as well. And so it takes an incredible amount of data. I don't want to offend any engineers on the call, or certainly when our team watches this, because it's an incredible amount of work that goes into building the algorithms that are designed to recognize and report things of specific event types. So in the case of telemetry systems, and I think some of them vary in what signals they're capturing, but it's my understanding that they're pretty limited in signals that they're capturing. From a computer vision perspective, and a OneTrack sensor perspective, we're capturing dozens and dozens of different signals at any given point of an operation or an activity, so that we are reporting on very specific activities. So not only are you're going to see things that, yes, two forklifts had an impact, but also we're monitoring the environment, right? So now you can actually see, an operator took their hands off the controls while the lift was in motion, or different things like that that we'll show you here towards the end of the presentation. But it really gives you a deep understanding of what's taking place, because the technology has been trained to look for those behaviors that would otherwise be considered unsafe or unproductive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a big fan of examples, Nick, on that. And while you were talking, I'm just thinking, because there's never a warehouse that has to go outside to load a will call, or if you have a client that needs flatbed loading or anything else, is that, yeah, a warehouse floor is nice and smooth, and hopefully it's clean and debris free. But the second you got to go outside to load a carrier or unload a carrier, that's a perfect example, because you're bouncing around a little bit, just the nature of it. So if those settings are dialed in for an inside activity, and you're not going to park the forklift per se. I mean, maybe you would, depending on the weight you need, but you're not going to go to another system that says this is calibrated correctly. You're going to go outside and load the truck and get them going, or unload them and move on. So your hands are going to bounce a little bit on the steering wheel and things of that nature. So the intuitive nature of what you just spoke about, that'd be a real world example that people do every day when they got to drive outside to load or unload. So perfect example there, Nick.
And that was our experience here because a lot of the loading is done on the asphalt, and obviously the floor environments shift. So that shift would trigger the telemetry system to spike, and then at times would just shut off the equipment in the middle of trying to do a loadout or doing some sort of receiving.
So I think moving on from accuracy, I want to talk about types of events, right? And the range, I think, of what goes on in a warehouse. I think everyone knows there are a lot of nuances that happen inside the four walls of a warehouse and out in the parking lot, to what you guys were just talking about. But Nick, can you talk a little bit about the types of events? And so it's not just impacts that OneTrack is picking up on, where I think in telemetry, it's, this is a high G force. You don't know what really happened, but we're going to say it's an impact because it's a high G force. But with OneTrack, it kind of looks at it differently with computer vision. So what are some of those nuanced behaviors? I know you mentioned hands off the steering compartments, but what are some of those other kind of leading indicators or unsafe behaviors that this type of technology can pick up on?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're thinking about different behaviors, right? There's so many things that an operator can engage in their daily activity that might be unsafe or lead to, an outcome that's less than ideal. So, we're looking for, how are they traversing a dock plate? Are they going into the trailer? Are they cutting across the dock plate sideways? Are they aggressively turning, right? So that's you hate to turn too sharply and have a load shift and dump something as you're moving throughout a facility. Hands outside the compartment, because I'm sure everyone can understand that has real serious implications from a safety perspective. So there's a variety of things. Being able to identify when somebody's using their cell phone. Believe it or not, many customers, and I think Inland Star was the same way, there was zero phone policy in place, but what we ended up finding was that, because it's a very difficult thing to coach on until you have a system where you can actually see what's happening, there was limited accountability for the operators. So I think, Daniel, you'd certainly be in a better position as you're thinking about all the activities and things that you've seen come out of the OneTrack system in your facility. What has really stood out to you is like, man, I'm really surprised that I see this. Or do you have any examples that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll go to a major red flag situation. We had an operator performing a work stream going from one area of the warehouse to another area of the warehouse. In between those two areas, there were roll-up doors. This was the end of the day. One of the roll-up doors gets closed, but the operator that's going to and from is driving in a manner where his body's positioned forward. As he's driving forward, he's just totally not looking in the direction that he's driving in, and drives through a roll-up door, collapses the entire thing. And fortunately for us, the OneTrack system was able to tell us the entire story, because the situation, it had us rely on trying to get footage from the facility, was going to be very limited with a ton of blind spots, and we weren't going to be able to capture the entire story. So that gave us an opportunity in real time to deal with the situation in the manner in which it needed to be dealt with. But that's just, a major event. But on a day-to-day, just looking at even the OneTrack catching bumps. I mean, if we know we're going over an area that still needs to be repaired, but it still works well enough, and we know that it's triggering, okay, we'll ignore it. But we also know that we have to pivot back to perhaps getting the dock plate fixed or something. Or maybe, there was some erosion or something happening on the floor that all of a sudden we start to see these vents on, and it causes us, hey, we have to pay attention to this. We have to make these repairs on the floor to mitigate these impacts from happening and putting wear on the equipment.
Yeah. Yeah. From a proactive perspective, Nick, there was a situation where we needed to get some additional space in the facility. So we extended the racks, and drivers were turning. It was a sharp turn, and we were able to see that the reason they have to make this sharp turn so they don't hit this pack station that's on the other side of the aisle for this other client, and by putting this rack, extending the rack to gain additional capacity in the warehouse, was causing the driver to make a sharp turn. And instead of saying, why are you making a sharp turn? We realized and was able to see that it was just the layout of the warehouse. So that would be proactive. You know, we don't want them to not turn quickly and injure somebody else in a different state. But because of the design of the warehouse and in an effort to get more efficiency, we created a problem with the operators on the floor. And that was able to identify, why is there always sharp turn, sharp turn, sharp turn? Everybody's making the sharp turn. What's the deal? And we were able to identify that was a problem. And so it was proactive without anybody getting in trouble. Nobody did anything wrong, but it prevented, you know, potentially really a tragic situation. So there was proactivity involved with it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Doug, I think you touch on something really important there, because it's not you know, we don't focus on this just to be hey, we're trying to monitor everything that the operators are doing, and, you know, using it as a gotcha tool, right? It is truly about, how do we make sure that the operators have accountability, but how do we make sure that we're holding up our end of the bargain from a customer's perspective on, you know, ensuring that the environment is as safe as it needs to be for our operators. It's as efficient as it can be for the operators, right? Because I think, you know, many customers that we talk to have certain KPIs and goals that their operators are required to hit. And so, you know, understanding and being able to identify those particular examples like you just described there ultimately help from a process perspective, ultimately help from an efficiency perspective, and then, you know, that icing on the cake being okay, and it makes the operation safer. So I think it's an incredible example to, you know, just some of the byproducts that our customers receive when you have visibility to the entire operations.
Mhm. Yeah, it's getting them involved too, right?
Yeah.
You made a valid point, because I think everybody says safety, monitor, penalize, right? If we can see what's going on, we can react, and oftentimes it's opportunities, you know, to improve efficiencies. And the operator, man, man, I need to tell somebody about this really sharp turn, but my day gets busy and I forget about it, and I just make that turn twice a day, and it's not, doesn't impact my situation. But having the example that I gave where it turned a sharp turn, you were able, you know, the driver, hey, you did a good thing here. You helped us identify a problem in the warehouse, and you are the reason that we're staying safe. So if you can have that buy-in, and this is the people part of it, right? This isn't necessarily the chemistry, but if you can say, this is here not to monitor you and penalize negative activity, it's here collaboratively so we can make sure this place is safe and more efficient. And that's really a mindset with the operators on the floor. But I think Daniel and his team have done a pretty good job with changing that mindset between camera means I'm being monitored, and if I do something wrong, I'm going to be penalized. We've kind of gotten away from that mindset, which has really helped the overall operation.
Yeah. Daniel, could you talk through the operator feedback, because it comes up and it's right in line with what Doug is talking about here. Of when OneTrack first came on, I think there was healthy skepticism, if I recall. But tell us how that's transitioned today, because we have so many examples of how operators now don't want to be on a piece of equipment without it because they have accountability that they've never had. Can you share your experience with that as the system has been in place for a few years now?
Yeah, obviously there was a reluctance, of course, coming from not having cameras over you to having cameras over you. But the biggest opportunity was the culture shift, right? And then just making sure that the team is assured that it's a net positive. And to Doug's point earlier, it's less about, you know, a gotcha. It's more about, hey, we're seeing trends and patterns, and how much of it can we chalk up to layout or a pallet on the floor or something to that event. And more of when we bring the associates into the fold, it's how to approach the situation, right? And more times than not, it's really more about trying to put a bigger spotlight in the situation to circumvent a reoccurrence, like a bad layout or a repair we need to do. So we gotten to the point where everyone's bought in and there's no reluctance, and anything we need to do to deploy an enhancement, there's a very short turnaround time. Obviously, there's that habit training, but that happens in short order. But it's been a positive experience overall. It's for us on the management side, it's really about approaching how we approach the team and leveraging the information and sharing the information we see on the camera to use that as an opportunity to coach and provide a more positive, safer environment.
Absolutely. You make me think of an analogy that I've used a few times, but when an NFL quarterback comes off the field, the first thing that they do is sit down and grab their tablet, right, to watch what just happened in that previous set of downs, whether they were successful or unsuccessful, right? How do you learn, right? What changes that they need to make sure that they're successful and lead their team down the field in the future, right? And this is very similar, right? You're able to see exactly what happened, coach the operators on the very specific behaviors, and ultimately ensure that they're being able to perform their duties as safely as possible with that understanding of, oh, you know what, I need to turn around when I'm making a backup motion, even though it might be just a small little, just a small motion, because ultimately all those little things add up to ultimately add up to big safety improvements as you talk about culture shift and everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's with the football analogy, right, is perfect. And I would say to folks that are listening on this show is that, yeah, that'll happen organically. And what I'm saying is that I would imagine 90% of the implementations are, I'm being monitored, I'm going to be penalized, this isn't fair, or whatever it may be. There's a friction there. And I'd encourage anybody on the call to make sure that comes from management to change that process. Will it happen organically? Yeah, over time. But if you really want to hit the ground running and see the efficiencies, buy-in with the employees, have that conversation so they completely understand this isn't a reactive or negative gotcha, like Daniel had said. So my point in this one is I would encourage the management team that decides to implement, make sure that is a statement or an explanation to the team of the difference. This is for all of us. There's going to be coaching moments for sure, but it's for the betterment, and it'll happen organically. But I think if you identify that as one of the key reasons, it'll happen quicker, and that's the whole point.
Absolutely.
So shifting gears to something that I think comes up a lot in conversations is, and this is OneTrack specific, but can it shut down the lift, the kind of lift control, operator control, that side of the equation? So Nick, can you talk through why OneTrack takes the approach that we do when it comes to the lift lockout side of the house? And then after that, I want to talk to Inland Star about, was that a concern when you were first evaluating this technology? Was that a benefit? Was that a con? How are you thinking through the lift lockout side of things? So I think that's a hot button issue for a lot of people when they're evaluating telemetry systems.
Yeah, it's certainly something that we hear often on potential customer calls that we're on. And I think it goes back to what has been talked about or discussed a little bit throughout this call is that need to go out, and now you're taking your supervisor's time to go unlock a piece of equipment for something that may have been just a crack in the ground or a piece of pallet that was left over. But the reason we took this deliberate approach is because when a piece of equipment is locked out, you render your operator sort of on an island, right? If things are happening and they're happening quickly and they're not able to get out of the way, that ultimately could be the difference between a very severe accident or their ability to slowly get that piece of equipment out of harm's way. So it really comes down to operator safety, in our opinion, as to why we don't want to lock out the equipment. Certainly there are added benefits from an installation perspective and a variety of other things, but it really comes down to that safety piece. And frankly, it was feedback from our customers that they didn't want their equipment locked out and their operators to be sort of stranded in an unsafe environment.
I'll definitely piggyback off of that. And that was our experience with the telematics, is that on the onset it sold to us as something that we could see benefit from, but in practice, I mean, it was more false events than a proactive event that really should have not triggered a shutdown. And it was inefficient. I mean, if we have leadership in meetings and operators trying to find them in the middle of trying to get a hot load out, that can impede, getting something out that, it's going to incur, some blowback. So we've definitely found ourselves with the telematics chasing our tails, constantly trying to figure out, like, why did it shut off? Like, what's going on? How to turn it back on at times. And so those inefficiencies to us just signal to us that there's less benefit to shutting off the equipment than there is just having that feature not even be a factor. So with OneTrack, we haven't had an experience where we see there should have been cause for a piece of equipment to shut down. And it's been a net benefit because, again, we get a video clip of whatever event's triggered. And if we see safety event come up on our phones, like, we can go out to the operator and be proactive in investigating what's happening in real time versus after the fact, or this guy's been looking for someone for an hour that had the supervisor permission to unlock the piece of equipment.
Yeah, I was just on a high level. I mean, on your website, it's .ai, not .com, right? And everybody's like, okay, AI is a buzzword now. What does it do? And even myself, I'm like, okay, how is AI applicable in our industry, right? And not having the lockout, your system is machine learning what's going on, right? I think, Nick, yesterday or the day before, we were talking about how does your system know when a forklift operator's hands are off the wheel? And you had said it just, through the learning and the tendencies and, understanding the facility. So this would be a very tangible example of don't lock the equipment out. We can provide safety by the analytics that we have or collecting the gazillion data points that you guys have, that this is a real life application of artificial intelligence and how it can benefit without creating problems with locking the machine out. Like you said, you're locked out in the middle of an aisle. Somebody's coming down. You're like, hey, slow down. I can't do it. He's getting off the equipment, putting himself in harm's way. So anyway, the AI piece and all the things that comes around with that, I didn't have an understanding of how that applied to this, but that would be an example for folks listening of how that's really applicable.
Yeah, and it's something that we talked about actually at the IWA Trifecta event just last week. Is AI is all the rage right now, but in reality, if a tool claims to use AI, you actually shouldn't. It shouldn't matter, right? It should perform a series of tasks or do things that will aid in your environment or better your operations. The AI piece almost becomes just, yeah, that's great. But this tool is very very important for us to run our operations because it's doing X, Y, or Z for us, right? And the AI almost becomes the afterthought when you have a piece of technology in your facility that is really truly delivering value and bettering your operations as a whole.
So let's talk video and notifications, right? I think some telematics system have one, have both, don't have either. Again, some do, some don't. So, Daniel, what was your experience with your old telemetry system? Were you getting video? Were you getting real-time notifications? What did that look like when you were using it?
Well, to my earlier point, it was there was the programming piece that I was lacking out of the box. So we needed to work with the engineers to get that up and running. We had no visibility, no cameras. Everything was mostly G-force triggered. So again, to compare and contrast with what OneTrack was offering, the visibility really stood apart and gave us, more of an opportunity to assess situations in real time that allowed us to make the necessary decisions to deal with the matter at hand. So I don't have experience with telematics that have built-in cameras. That was a feature that they were trying to sell to us as an enhancement, but due to our underwhelming experience with the telematics, we didn't see a reason code to upgrade because it should have been an enhancement to something that should have worked well out of the box. And this is where OneTrack comes in, is that again, on the onset, it being received as more of a safety opportunity, but aside from that, there's so many capabilities that continue to be offered with what we're doing that's going to further enhance our opportunities to run more efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, I know we've talked around a few different event examples. So can you actually walk through practically what some of these look like? Just a handful, nothing too in depth, but just to give people a sense of here is the type of thing that you would actually see with this computer vision technology.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me jump back up here. I thought that was going to play as I started this, but so as we're watching this, what you'll see, and it's a little bit more difficult because we have it blurred out for anonymous purposes or to anonymize the videos. But I think one of the key things that it is a major takeaway for many of our customers is that when you're watching these types of videos, you're actually able to pick up and coach on not just the moment of impact, but 5 or 6 other things that may have taken place that, they didn't look in the direction of travel. They had their hoodie up. Unfortunately, they have their cell phone out and they're driving down the aisles, right? There's a variety of things that, sometimes half a dozen additional components to these videos that you're able to now coach your operators on to say, hey, yeah, you ran into a pole, but you didn't check your surroundings. You had your hoodie up. You weren't wearing all your PPE. You had your cell phone out. Maybe you weren't looking in the direction of travel. So all of those things begin to coalesce and come together in such a way that your team now has incredible amount of understanding of why something occurred, not just that boom, that impact, where they're having to piece it back together. You can really understand what's occurring. And so when it comes to product damage, right, we've all experienced it. I think all of our customers have experienced it one time or another, but why does it happen and how do you make changes accordingly, right? How do you ensure that when product damage does occur, that like this operator, he stays in the compartment. He actually brings his arms in and folds them so he's not injured, right? And so while, yes, the product damage is a bad thing, it's more important that he stayed safe, right? He kept his hands inside that equipment and wasn't harmed. And then also back to the point of that hands coming off the control, it's a hugely concerning behavior that we're seeing and many of our customers are seeing today in their facilities. So we want to make sure that we're delivering this information so that your teams can see exactly what happens when hands do come off the equipment, right? So on that left-hand side, we're fortunate that nothing occurred. But as you see in these two right side videos, just that split second of having your hands off the control and that minor overcorrection or wrong adjustment when they come back to those controls can lead to ultimately very scary accidents. And then finally, as you're thinking about the computer vision technology and bringing in, a piece of technology that ultimately can help you from a productivity and a quality side of things. So leveraging a system like OneTrack to ultimately understand how are my loads being, how is the product look when it goes into the trailer, giving your team now the accountability that has never been had for if a product shows up at a customer's and they said, hey, it's damaged, you now have the ability to go back, pull that footage and say, well, it left our location in perfect condition. Might have a transportation issue or something else that's going on there. So again, just folding in that ability to see things helps to cut down on cost and risk, right? So when you can see what's happening in your warehouse, you can make adjustments, you can coach your operators more effectively and ultimately help them to be safer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're running a little short on time. We won't jump into questions quite yet. I got a couple of things I want to ask the Inland Star folks. I know you've talked through how accountability has improved, safety has improved, you've adjusted some processes, but how have you used this kind of visibility to, one, better run your warehouse, but two, to deliver better service to customers? I think that's the name of the game, right? You want to keep people safe, deliver fantastic service to customers. And the Inland Star motto is do it right. So how are you using this kind of technology to do it right all the way through that value chain from, box in to value to customer?
Yeah, let me jump in on that one first, right? First of all, again, people need to understand, and our viewers, is that, and we're the same way. It started off as a safety solution, and it's morphing because the technology, you're thinking of this more holistically, right? What other things can we do with your technology to better? And you just nailed it with the efficiency, right? And so you can simply say, this person is on this piece of equipment, and here's the route that they're taking, and here's the time involved to load this truck. It seems to be off, seems to be a little wonky. Why is it taking so much longer to complete that activity? So you can go and basically say, are the products staged incorrectly on the warehouse floor? Is the truck in the wrong dock door, right? You're just like that fishbowl camera, the halo camera, which some people are like, that's kind of confusing to look at. It's awesome, right? Once you get used to the fishbowl, it's the same thing as you're understanding, where is this person? What equipment are they on? Okay, that piece of equipment isn't as efficient. There's a problem with it. It's slowing them down. And so just those little nuances that you have where you can link people to equipment to processes all together. That's what we found that makes the efficiency. And when it's efficient, it takes us less time. Less time means, more It's more efficient, which means, to be frank, we could generate a little bit more money because the process takes longer, but it also can help identify a safer and more effective loading. I'm thinking specifically to a truck, but you get those three things combined, which your system does, and you can overlay each other and figure stuff out. That's like cutting edge stuff, man. That's cool.
Yeah, and you know, in a practical situation, I mean, there's times where there's maybe gaps between you know, a driver pickup and then the loadout and then the time the guy takes off. And then without OneTrack to at least help us start figuring out, hey, what's our piece in this equation? Was it our inefficiencies? Were we the root cause of the delay? Did the driver get in on time, get loaded out on time, and then decided to take a nap somewhere in the warehouse? And we could start with just looking at time on truck, maybe capture some footage of the operator who performed the work stream, capture the amount of pallets that were loaded out on time, and then help us just you know, present to the client who's stressing over the situation on, you know, perhaps maybe where we failed if it was on us, or what exactly happened. So from a productivity standpoint, it's just having that clearer picture of what's happening so that we convey in a short amount of time to the customer to move to resolution. It's priceless.
Yeah. Another have an efficiency, and again, I said I'm big on examples, right? I'm sure everybody has a client that says, okay, take a picture when the truck is 1/3 full, 2/3 full, full, close the doors, take a picture, you know, all these things. And customers are going out there with their phone, taking the pictures, uploading it, emailing it, or putting it in a repository. And then the customer is accessing it, pulling it down. It's the file's too big. I can't do this. And the time involved to get that type of requirement just goes away. Here's a link to the video, right? I mean, you wanted it 1/3, 2/3 in full. How about the entire time? How about every single pallet in real time? And we're not taking pictures. It's not static. And here's a link, and we're done with it, and they have access to it. And so the efficiency on that side is something that that we've noticed with some clients that we have to do literally those exact same things I just laid out.
Yeah, and on the reverse side of that too, is just you know, receiving material, you know, capturing the condition of it as it's coming into the facility. That's reported to the customer, and that gives us, you know, a little more substantiated detail to share with the customer on what we encountered as we're performing that work stream.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I'll do one more question, Nick. I'll point this one to you. I think we talk about OneTrack being that warehouse operating system. I think there's a lot of things we've really focused on safety, and we just now started touching on productivity and quality on this call, but there's also things like pre-flight checklists and utilization and equipment usage. There's all kinds of stuff that I think can be brought into a system like this. So just from your perspective, what would you say to someone who's considering one of those more maybe traditional systems versus a system like OneTrack? And without being a little too salesy, but what benefit do you get from that like single source approach that has all of these various items in like one dashboard for you to use?
Yeah. Simply put, I'd say call me. We can chat about it. And it's something that, again, I don't want to be too salesy, right? But I think we're happy to have these discussions on, you know, walk us through why are, you know, these features important versus some of these other things. And I think, you know, we really take that approach of, you know, that partnership approach, right? We've been working with Inland Star for a few years now, and as they've made reference to, we're just continuing to build and grow the functionality for them because their business is evolving. They're growing and changing. And so this is a system that can ultimately grow and change and evolve with your business and help you to be more efficient and help you to provide safety metrics that are, you know, second to none, and give you that insight into the quality practices that maybe otherwise you wouldn't have. So again, I don't want to take too much time on it, but I'm happy to have the discussion with anybody that would be interested in learning more.
Yeah, fair enough. So we're going to open things up to Q&A here. Ben, I don't know if you want to come on and introduce the Q&A here. I'm also happy to take it, but please start putting any questions you have in the chat. And then we got a couple submitted ahead of time or folks to talk to us at Trifecta, which we can hit at the beginning here, but we definitely want to answer anyone's question on the line today as well.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. Yeah, we actually have a question that popped up. Can OneTrack integrate with other warehouse management systems or existing telematics if we don't completely replace our current tech?
Great question. So yes, we integrate with any and all WMS systems, labor management systems, clock punch systems. So is virtually all systems within a warehouse can be pulled, data can be pulled from them and pushed into OneTrack. We are not connecting with traditional telemetry systems for a variety of reasons, but that is not something that we're doing today. So yes, on all of your systems that you're operating your warehouse with, no to the telemetry side of things.
Okay. Evan, if you want to go ahead with your questions, I don't see anything else to. Oh, wait, one just popped up. Let's see here. Does this offer access control to the system?
Access control in terms of visibility and things, if I'm understanding the question correctly, and if not, certainly don't hesitate to reach out after the call. But access control, yes, you are able to set profiles, access level controls to what that profile is able to see and have access to. We take data privacy very seriously, and we recognize that all of our customers take it very seriously, right? So being able to monitor and track who has seen these videos and what they're doing in the dashboard is all features and functionality that are available within the OneTrack platform.
He
I
came
think
back and
he's
said,
specifically.
said to
I
the
was gonna
trucks.
say,
Sorry.
yeah, he's specifically talking about the access controls to the forklift. I think that goes back, Nick, to what you were saying earlier, where we don't specifically lock out the equipment. We don't say, the equipment can't actually move. What we do is if someone doesn't log on to the equipment, someone doesn't complete their pre-flight, we have an audible alarm. It's like your seatbelt alarm in your car, but far more annoying. No one likes to hear it. So that one encourages the operator to actually scan in, complete their pre-flight, do all those things. And we also push a notification to supervisors, to your ops manager, to whoever you need it to go to in real time to say, XYZ lift is in motion without sign-in, XYZ lift is in motion without a pre-flight. You need to go check this out. So we're not physically locking out the lift, but we do have kind of stop gaps in place to make sure that those types of behaviors aren't happening in the warehouse, and when they do.
Okay, we have another question. How did you make the case to top leadership to approve a technology like this?
Daniel, you can take that one. I
Yeah,
think
I'll take it. I'll take it. Yeah, I mean, leadership was involved with the procuring of the new equipment, and they were also involved with the presentation of the provider that we ultimately chose to go with the telematics. So we understood that there would be a benefit provided that it would meet our needs. They were intimately involved with complaints we had against the provider, and we were synced up with the shortcomings of what that telematic system actually offered. And it was just a timing scenario where OneTrack comes in and we field the call, we move to a demo, we look at the demo, and then we kind of have like a oh snap moment. We were like, well, this is what we wanted and more. So it was an easy sell. I think got more than an ROI on the procurement of this. The visibility to just having eye to wherever an operator is gives us, a lot of opportunities to, make the necessary adjustments to improve our efficiency. So it was a pretty easy sell on our side. It was an investment.
Another
Yeah, I think-
question. How long are videos available historically?
Yeah, great question. So two answers to that. Number one, once they land in the dashboard, they are there indefinitely or in accordance with your company's data retention policy. So many of our customers have historical footage back from 5 years ago, right? And it gives them the ability to go back and understand what was happening and how far have they come. Second answer to that question is on the device, you can actually access footage for up to 2.5 weeks, roughly. So let's say, for example, there's an off-lift accident that a forklift is in proximity of. You can actually request footage from that sensor so that you can do an event investigation for a non-lift related incident as well. So if you have to go back and understand why somebody might have slipped and fell, you can actually get that and request that information and that data right from OneTrack, and we'll send you the video link as well. So 2 answers, but indefinitely in the dashboard and up to 2.5 weeks off of the device.
I'm not seeing any more questions pop up with the Q&A. Evan, did you have a couple questions here? We still have about 4 minutes left. Did you say you had some questions from people from last week that?
Yeah, well, one of them was a gentleman was asking, it was more just details around how do you actually make the case to top leadership. And I think, Daniel, what you mentioned was important there. But Nick or Doug, do you guys have any tips, tricks, ways to bring leadership involved and get them engaged? Maybe this is an ops manager, a safety manager, a general manager who then needs to go make the case to the VP, the president, whoever it is, to open up the purse strings for something like this. So what process would you encourage people to go through? Maybe not just for OneTrack, but just for evaluating technology to solve problems in the warehouse. How would you kind of coach people to approach that?
Yeah, it's a great question. The fact that it came up twice, once last week and once on the call here, obviously that's a barrier. So I guess, and we do this a little bit. It was before my time when I came on board, but talking to Daniel, I know this was the approach is, sometimes there's the 15 feet in front of you, but if you take a 50 foot ahead of you and see the potential of this, I think that really makes a good case. If the decision makers are solely focused on the cheapest way to watch our employees and penalize if things go wrong, that's a different mindset to this whole thing, right? And that's not the way things are moving forward. Maybe that's a 10-year ago type of approach. So pivoting the mindset, not the 15 feet in front, the 50 feet ahead, and really understand the implications and the power that this has beyond who's doing what and how do we control that. That is the way that we got. And sometimes people aren't into that, right? I mean, I got a budget and all they need to do is monitor my people and that's all I care about, then so be it, right? But I think really in this day and age to use the technology that's around, and I made a reference to, .ai, not .com, and the power that this technology has to grow and impact your business moving forward, that's the 50 feet. If they're just focused on the 15, that's going to be a hard sell because that's not what this is about.
Right. And I think, Doug, to that point, you're alluding to it here, but when we have these discussions and ultimately look to bring leadership in, it's incumbent upon us to understand what are your top level business initiatives, right? What are the things that your organization is focused on to take you from that 15 feet to 50, right? And ultimately, how can a piece of technology, OneTrack aside, how can a piece of technology help you to get to that 50-foot, that 50-foot mindset or that 50-foot view out in front of you? So I encourage you, whenever you're thinking about technology, it's what are our top level business initiatives? What are the important things for our organization today? And ultimately, how will this technology align and add value to us accomplishing those goals?